Welcome to Doing Good by Doing Better, the podcast for world shapers, not spectators. I'm Margaret Rogers, CEO of Pariveda, a professional services firm that helps make potential possible for our clients. On this show, I talk with founders, executives, and innovators who share hard lessons, bold ideas, and real strategies for purpose-driven growth. This episode will offer practical insights you can use this week to solve forward. Because at Pariveda, we know that doing good only endures when we keep learning how to do better. Hello, everyone. Today I'm with Angelic Gibson, Chief Information Officer at AvidXchange and a Forbes CIO Next Innovative Leader honoree who leads with an inspiring mix of operational rigor and people-centered purpose. In this episode, Angelique shares how her faith shapes the way she leads at work, including the responsibility she feels to help her team reach their highest potential. She takes us through her unconventional path into technology leadership, from being recruited while waitressing to going back to school mid-career and then growing into IT leadership roles at companies like Sleepy's and Estée Lauder. We also talk about the massive risks she took early in her role, how she has thoughtfully built and scaled AI within the business, and a passion project focusing on protecting vulnerable children. Let's jump in. Angelique, thank you so much for being here. I've been looking forward to this conversation and a chance to hear the way you think about leadership. So to start, I'd love to hear about what you've been energized by in your work at AvidXchange.
Yeah, well, there's a lot. So we're still in the throes of some pretty good transformation. And so I'm all about making sure that our platforms are modernized and doing great things there. But even more importantly, I don't know if you've heard the news lately, but we have been recently taken private by TPG. And so it's just been a very interesting experience to go through the process of helping take AvidXchange public to then take them private. It's a journey. It's been a fun one, certainly a hard one, but it's still, when it comes to the direction of the company and what's the best funding mechanisms to make sure that we realize our vision, is just super interesting to me. And then caring for the people along the way is always close to my heart. So managing all that well, those three balls in the air, transformation, taking a company private, and making sure our people are seen and cared for, that fuels me day in and day out.
Oh my gosh, that's so fantastic. And the fact that you think about the people on the forefront, and that is something that sometimes gets lost in kind of a shuffle like this. So that's amazing. I am very curious and very excited to learn about your journey from developer to CIO. Lots of folks are very interested to hear about that and just your cross-industry path on how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I would call it more of divine fate that brought me into technology. I've shared this before, but it's always worth repeating. Technology found me. I did not find it. I was actually going to school to be a paralegal, and I was in my last semester, and I realized I was going to be miserable doing that role for the rest of my life, not knocking the role of a paralegal. Certain people love it, and they're wired and made for it. I was not one of those people. And by chance, I was also serving in a restaurant, and a recruiter came in and found me and said, "Hey, we have the infamous Y2K." This was actually back in 96, 97.
I remember that.
In preparation for Y2K, we need to upgrade all this technology and get it to client server technology. Had no clue what she was talking about, but she promised me she was going to give me a dummies manual, and all I had to do was follow the instructions, and I was going to ace the assignment. And so she wanted to know if I would give it a whirl. It was a 2-week assignment. And I said, why not? Make some extra money. And so I gave it a whirl. And I ended up being one of the top consultants in that 2-week period. And it was for MCI System House, then bought by EDS at the time. They said, we want to bring you on full time. And so they ended up hiring me full time into the help desk. So I started on the help desk before I actually moved into software engineering. But they kind of wrote my ticket, paid for me to go back to school, comp sci focus. And I started to learn everything from computing up through the infrastructure stack to understanding data and SQL, and then finding my way into software engineering. And I was very fortunate. It just came natural to me, to be honest. It was just, I was made for it. And through that, I just have had incredible opportunities cross my path. And to your point, when you opened, Margaret, it's not one industry that's kept my attention. I've had different industries cross my path, and people are like, why don't you stay and become the master of the industry? And I am a avid learner. Like I have to be learning. And I also have a gift that I can learn things pretty quickly. I don't mean that arrogantly. It's just I can learn things quickly. And so I have to be challenged. And so when I go into different industries, it's immediately a new challenge because I have to absorb the content. I also see patterns just as a software engineer, you see things. And so things that are happening in higher education, it's analogous to what's happening in retail. And people are, they don't see the pattern matching, but I just start to see patterns and I can connect dots. And so it's been a very rewarding and fulfilling career that I've had to just be able to learn and grow in multiple different industries, but applying the same skill and level of experience that I'm picking up along the way.
I love how you're talking about seeing patterns, and you often have written about the importance of the human connection in IT.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear more about the patterns that you saw in technology and talent and that human connection in IT.
Well, a good crisis or a good problem, a stressful situation, you're either going to see the best of humanity or you're going to see the worst of humanity. And typically, it's the latter, it's the worst of humanity when we're in a high stress situation. And there is a commonality amongst technology that if things aren't working, if you're not having a good day, then everybody who you're working with is probably having a bad day. And so there's a lot of opportunity to have many bad days when you're in the world of technology. That's just the reality. Technology is not bulletproof. You're going to have problems. And so, what is 100% true is do you know the people you're in the fire with? Because you're going to be in the fire. You can drum along for quarters on end, but the day will come where fire will hit. And do you have relational equity to ride out the storm, if you will? And so, one thing I believe at my core, whether when I was an individual contributor or when I started to grow in the ranks of leadership, is do I know my team enough to say that they know that I care about them? And vice versa. Do I actually think they care about me or am I just the reporting head? And if the hierarchy is getting in the way, my goal is to make sure the hierarchy goes away, like get it out of the way. Because at the end of the day, you're going to go as fast as the depth of your trust in a relationship. So whether you're solving an incident that's hitting production and the company suffering the pain of that technology incident, or you're driving really complex, hard digital transformation, it's all true. What we're leading here, it's not easy stuff. There's going to be moments of high stress, and you got to be able to look at your coworker in the face and say, hey, I see you. Let's slow down. Are you okay, first and foremost? So let's breathe. And how are we going to get through this together? And so that's the commonality. It's can you actually do life with the people that you're working with, just like you would have candid conversations at home with the people that you love and that you were raised with, or now you're raising your own family. How are you, caring for the people that you're spending the majority of your work week with to the same level of care that you would, your best friend at home?
Yeah, with that care comes a lot of trust, right? You earn a lot of trust in that relationship. One of the things that I think is interesting is your leadership style really intentionally integrates with your purpose, which is not something every executive is comfortable doing openly. So, talk a little bit, how do you define your purpose and how has that shaped difficult decisions in your career? Has it ever created tensions in the corporate setting?
So, yeah, I have a very deep faith, and it is who I am. I get up very early and I spend, 2 hours with the Lord. And it's like, well, how do you do that? And it's a lot of prayer time. I listen to worship music and just get my heart ready for Him. And then you read the Bible and you just see where He's taking you for the day. And I share that. I've shared that openly on several different media forums, but my team is well aware of it too. And it definitely has ruffled people's feathers. They don't like it. It makes them uncomfortable. But the thing is this, I respect every person that I work with very much. And I will never, at least I try not to, push my faith on people. I think God gave us free will. That means every person gets to choose whether they believe or they don't believe what they're going to believe. So who am I to superimpose my belief system on somebody else? It's up to God to move in that person's mind and heart to lead them to a faith filled life. But I can live my life by example. And so the principles where I just think of Jesus teaching the multitudes in Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount. If you just go through that and I'm not living that in the workplace, but I preach it on a Sunday, people can smell bad fruit. And so my testimony of my faith is more about how I choose to live. And yes, I give voice to my faith. I will speak about it, but I never try to superimpose it on someone else's belief system. And I also challenge people who have taken issue with my faith, because I've certainly had my fair share of conversations where people have challenged me, like they feel like I'm superimposing it on them. And I take it to heart, but I also say, hey, listen, there's several people that I work with that they do not share the same worldview that I have. And I allow them to show up who they are, and they live vibrantly under my leadership. So they can come to work and fully be who they are. And I expect the same latitude with myself. And so practice what you preach. And so I have a very diverse team, as you would expect in technology, diversity of just people from different backgrounds, different countries, different religious viewpoints. It's a melting pot, right? That's what we do in technology. And that's how my teams have been structured since day one. And so, again, it's all about living out what I believe and then giving people space to be who they are and not putting them in a box that if you don't share a Christian worldview, we're not going to connect. That's just not how I operate.
Yeah, I have a good colleague of mine who is also a CEO who is very much similar to you, like expresses and gives voice to his faith is a good way to say it, and also has been challenged because of it. So I think that's a really beautiful thing of being yourself and creating space at the same time.
Yeah, and I think just to pull the thread all the way through to purpose, I think about my purpose is I am to care for the people. And the word, it says you got to shepherd the flock, right? And so I say you have to care for the people that are under your leadership. And if you really study the life of a shepherd with sheep, it's fascinating what the shepherd goes through to make sure that every sheep is taken care of. There's a book, it's called The Shepherd's Look at Psalm 23. I highly recommend it, but it really starts to show you the heart of what I believe God's heart is. And then that is my purpose, is to care for the people where they're at, but then call out what God put in them. And so my job is to help every single person on my team be the best that they can be at what they're called to do. And that means sometimes we have people on the wrong seat. It doesn't mean that we vote them off the bus. It means how do we find a better, more optimized seat so their strengths and talents can be put to good use. And it also means sometimes God needs them in another environment. And so maybe they're called away somewhere else, but we're still connected as people.
You spend a lot of time with non-for-profits and you serve on boards. Is there a story where a nonprofit or your community work influenced you in your corporate decision making?
I'm very aware of money movement. That may sound so odd. I work for AvidXchange. We move money. At the end of the day, we are one of the largest money movers in the country, actually. And if we look at one of the biggest trades going through our world economic system, it's actually human trafficking, which is just horrible. And so I was introduced to the issue of human trafficking in 2015. And once I realized that it's not just an overseas, somewhere else in a third world country type problem, that it's here in America, the land of the free, I was just sick to my stomach over it. And so you couldn't just sit silent. I had to get engaged. And so, first and foremost, just learning about the problem and how one of the number one assets in our economy is human beings, it's just not okay. And so, how do I use my voice in the marketplace, my influence, to start to educate and bring awareness through other marketplace leaders so they can help stomp out this issue too? So I do a lot of awareness. I founded an organization called Project Freedom Carolinas, which its sole purpose is to raise awareness on the issue of human trafficking. What is it? What's the problem in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I live? And what's the problem across the country and then globally? And then how can people mobilize to actually create positive impact? And how can they do that through time, talent, treasure? And so we literally have a mobilization strategy to help people get connected to the cause, to help stomp it out. Everything from prevention and awareness to when someone's rescued, life sustainment. How can you take your talents, your gifts, and your treasures and help provide solutions to the problem and not just be an observer on the sidelines? So that's where I would say those intersections cross is how I build systems and processes for companies connected to technology. I take that same skill and think about what's the system that we need across our communities to have effective solutions to manage this issue of human trafficking and help people get out and get healed.
That is such a huge issue, and being able to do something about it and get yourself energized to do something about it is amazing, and non-for-profits, I'm sure, appreciate your support and your systems thinking in creating those processes. That's remarkable. You talked about digital transformations, like we almost feel like we're continuously transforming
Yes,
all
always.
the time. What's a moment in your career where the stakes were high and the decision was yours to create that transformation?
I would say here at AvidXchange, they had already been on some sort of journey on transformation before I got here. And when I got here and I did a full evaluation, I was like, what we've been doing is really not what we need for today and our future. So we're going to have to revisit the strategy and go in a pretty drastic different direction. And being the new kid on the block and me communicating such news, it was a very hard pill to swallow, but I'm very fortunate that the board of directors and my peer group and my boss, Mike Prager, heard. We took that bet and we went in a very different direction with our transformation. And when I mean, you can build tech a lot of different ways, but if you don't build it with a lot of agility and loose coupling in mind at the forefront, you're probably going to have some hard problems to deal with down the road. And we were in a situation where there was reason to pause for our architecture to scale long term. And so we went all in. We made a huge bet and is paying dividends. It's today, it's our future, it's the life of the company now. And so it has a good news story at the end of it.
That's a good, very good news story. When you think about moving from developer to CIO over your career, looking back, what was the hardest personal blind spot you had to confront to grow into become the leader that you are?
I think there's multiple transition points. So it's really when you have to go through mindset shifts. And one that was pivotal for me from individual contributor to just leader was, and we've heard it said, what's gotten me to that point is not what's going to take me to the next level. And so where I had found success based on individual contribution, and I was like the master engineer and, I was a great architect and all these accolades were always coming my way for my individual contributions. I had to let that go. And now I had to start to fuel that energy. And do I have rock stars on my team that can now receive the accolades that I'm so used to getting? And going from rock star individual contributor to leader, it was a really weird transition for me because I was also very much used to words of affirmation. And when I shifted into leadership, the affirmations in leadership can start to go down because rightfully you are giving the accolades and the affirmations to the teams who are creating the success for the company, right? So I had to really change my mindset, let go of my ego to be like, I don't need the accolades. It's not about me. It's about the betterment of the company and we're all in it together. So that was one unlock in my mindset that I had to go through. And then I would say really believing in myself was another unlock where I always felt like I had to be 100% qualified to stretch for the next leadership role. And so maybe I was slower to go for the next role because I didn't think I was equipped. If you look at the peer group, I was. And so just really seeing my own capability early on, I didn't realize I'd put my own glass ceiling on myself.
Yeah. Oh, we talked about that recently. I had a nice visit with some of our up and coming new talent who are all females, they're all women. And we talk about how it's so hard to advocate for yourself sometime, whether it be cultural or just gender bias that we place upon ourselves. That's huge. You hinted at your non traditional path, but you actually have an MIS degree. You got that mid career, which is probably feeling less conventional. But what did taking that kind of non-traditional path teach you about developing talent and how you nurture others?
Oh gosh. So I really believe in understanding someone's aptitude. So, skill and will, and then what is their potential, and then helping them get in roles where they're thriving and not stuck because you can just fumble your way into a role and really not be enjoying it, but you're kind of stuck on the ladder path, if you will. I'm all about understanding the strengths of my team. So I'm a huge advocate for strength finders. Have you heard of that? Yep. It's all about leading through strengths and not working on weaknesses. It
Hmm.
takes 100 times more energy to focus on someone's weakness to bring them up to where you need them to really deliver versus really optimizing on people's strengths. So when I look at talent and I am having career conversations with people, I really inspect for what gets them excited. Where's the passion? Because passion and skill, when those two things start to collide, magic happens. And, using assessments like strength finders or personality tests or what have you to understand how are their strengths being shown and demonstrated, or what's the opportunity that they have in front of them to leverage their strengths? Does it exist or not? And if it doesn't, it's just having candid conversations to say, what else could there be for you? Hugely passionate about getting people to dream. And that's very unconventional in the sense that when I sit down with people and say, if you had a blank sheet of paper, blank canvas, and you could dream and just paint your life, how would you spend your mornings, your afternoons, your evenings? What would your weekends look like? Just what does that look like?
I
That
love that
detail.
statement.
But so many people just look at you and they're like, what? Because we don't actually teach people to dream. And so what really happens is people aren't passionate about what they're doing. And you're getting probably half the productivity from a team member because you're not connected to what actually drives them. And just really, again, I inspect my leaders to be having these types of conversations to draw out, are we connected to purpose and passion, skill, will, capability? Like, all those things are so important. But do you have a 360 view of your teammate, and are they on the right path for themselves and for the company? Otherwise, we're just, again, the productivity is not going to be there. So for me, that's the performance conversation, is connecting a person's passion, skill, and will and potential. It all comes together into this tapestry.
You can get such a huge amplification of performance by having all four. I think companies often do one part, just one part, maybe two, right? But getting all four, I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, and especially in different kinds of environments. And I'm wondering, like, in your journey, people sometimes experience bias or some sort of criticality and finding allies in those moments. Can you talk about a story in your journey where you had to navigate one of those dynamics, and what did it teach you? Because you sound like a very resilient person. You're learning all the time and trying to figure things out. So I'm curious to hear about that.
Gosh, I got to be honest with you. I have been very fortunate throughout my career. I've always had allies, and it's just people who saw in me what I didn't see in myself, to be quite frank. And I think that's partly why I am so passionate about having other people find that as well. And I hold my leaders accountable. If I sniff out that my leaders are actually not leading people well, as I described, then that's a performance conversation I'm going to have directly. I don't care what level of leader you are in the organization, there's going to be a conversation. It's either going to be had with me directly, or I'm inspecting that the conversations are taking place. And I think it's because I don't take for granted. I've always had incredible people seeing the potential in me and pulling it out and harvesting it. And so I've learned by example. I've had some incredible leaders. They weren't intentionally trying to harvest the talent in me. That's just how they were as people. They were just being them. And so I had a front row seat to that. And I value the daylights out of it. And I also think, going back to faith, that's, if you look at the 12 disciples, they were all muckety mucks from the wrong side of the tracks, if you will. And Jesus called them forth. He didn't go to the highly educated. He didn't go to the perfect path people. He didn't go to the perfectly righteous people. He went to the people that we probably ignore every day. And so, yeah, that would be a part of my story, is people saw more in me than what I saw in myself. Hence, I am where I'm at. And if you're not doing the same for other people, then what's the point of it all?
Yeah, yeah. You are also really thoughtful about aligning tech with business goals. You've designed programs like AvidWow and the Great Connect. I'd love to hear about those programs. Tell us a little bit about that.
There's the old saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so back in the day, one of the first business books I ever read was The Goal. Have you heard of The Goal?
I don't think so.
Okay,
No.
it's amazing. It's all about lean manufacturing, and it's birthed from Toyota, right? And it's just basically a fictional novel of this production manager in a manufacturing plant that goes through every nook and cranny in the operation of manufacturing and sees the friction points and leanly cleans it out and creates a robust, awesome manufacturing line. I'm paraphrasing. But I read this book and it talk about connecting the dots. This book came out in the 90s, I think, but it was way before DevOps was a thing. Okay. DevOps was birthed from lean manufacturing. That's the connective tissue. So if you read, I think the first book was the Phoenix Project. That Phoenix Project was actually birthed off the book The Goal. But I had
I
already,
didn't know that because I've read
yes.
the Phoenix Project.
Okay. So I read The Goal first, and that was my business lens starting my career. And that's how I looked at software engineering as a manufacturing line. That's how I looked at it. And so connecting those dots. And so what is the start from idea to we're releasing something into production, and every step along the way? Can we measure it? And whatever the longest measurement is, you got to reduce that cycle time and just keep reducing so you can have the highest productivity team under the sun, right? And so that's what we do. I have everything incredibly well measured so we can then manage it. And you start at the highest outcomes, right? And you work your way backwards to understand, are we going as fast as we can? Is the quality there? Is the cost in line? What's the risk to the customer? And you look at it through those 4 boxes, and you can understand what levers you need to pull to speed up engineering, slow it down, like whatever you need to do to get the right outcomes for the business. And the proof is in the pudding. The first year I got to AvidXchange, just as a working example, we were delivering 25% of what we committed to do from a technology organization.
Oh,
Could you
wow.
imagine? 25%.
Yeah.
Wow. Now we're north of 90%. And if I were to tell you the actual statistics, it's crazy. But last year alone in 2024, we delivered 100% of what was asked of us. So if you asked tech to do something, it was done. 90% of it was done on the date we said we were going to do it. 10% had up to an 8-week swing, which is unheard of. I'm
Wow.
super proud of the team. The team just is. So this is a huge shout out to my entire team, like crushing it, right? Super
They
proud of
all
them.
have to they all have now have to subscribe to this podcast.
That's right.
That's just the thing.
They will be. But the point is, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so I'm a data geek. I told you that. I started in data engineering. And so I'm all about the data and data discussion, decision, and you get the outcomes that you need.
That is so fantastic. I will tell you, you can't have a podcast and talk to a CIO and not talk about AI. So I'm going to go to a little bit of
Yes.
AI. And you've made AvidXchange a little bit of a test bed for enterprise AI, even requiring company-wide training. What was the boldest bet you placed on AI, and what happened when the team actually tried it?
I would say we were betting on AI before other people were betting on AI. So that in itself was a huge bet. So we were at a decision point a few years back, 2019, 2020, where do we want to build our own Avid invoice capture product, which basically says we process millions and millions of invoices per year. So as an invoice comes in, we use AI to take the data off the invoice and then to automatically process it into our system. So we want less touch, less human intervention. So AI is a perfect use case for this. But there were other types of products, OCR type technology, that were fit for that purpose. We believed that if we actually went AI instead of like traditional OCR, we could have a better strategic outcome for the business long term. But this was like new in as far as 2019, 2020 goes. And so there was a pretty big decision debate on this topic. Do we buy or build? And we put the stake in the ground from a technology perspective and say our vote and hard recommendation is we're going to build this thing. Not because we don't believe in buying when it makes sense. Lots of use cases for that we've done that on. But this is strategic. This is different. And if we get it right on invoice, we can rinse, lather, repeat through the entire tech stack for business value creation out to the customer. So we did that. Highly successful. And now, boom, 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 the capabilities are flying out the door to the customer. You take that same mindset and you start to apply it to business workloads. So we are ahead of the curve. And again, that's not lipstick on a pig. We are ahead of the curve when it comes to AI, both from a business application perspective, internal to AvidXchange, And because we're a software company, innovating in our products out to customer, we're ahead of the curve there as well. So much so that we got huge affirmation and accolades from TPG, who just took us private on our progress. So I say that again, super proud of the team for just having the grit and perseverance to be early in the AI game. And now we're really reaping the benefits, both from large language models, deep learning to generative AI. We have use cases covering everything you could imagine.
How do you navigate that? Historically, any sort of emerging tech that really changes somebody's job significantly triggers a level of fear and uncertainty. And when you talk about patterns, that happened during cloud. Like everybody needs to go
Yeah.
cloud, and all of a sudden the on-prem people were like, wait, what's going on? Same thing happened. Some of it probably was your early adoption and getting it into your strategies. But I'm curious, how did you navigate a little bit of that fear or emotional resistance? Or maybe there wasn't any. I'm curious.
Well, there's always going to be fear with change, right? And you just described it perfectly. And I truly believe the acronym, instead of fear being a word, make it an acronym, false evidence appearing real. This is the reality. Those who are slow to adopt the change are going to find themselves less valuable than their peer group who adopt the change faster. Just look at Blockbuster, look at Netflix. You can look at any example where you don't move at the clip of change. You will be sunset, whether it's a company or a person and a job. I loved the DevOps. I love the cloud example because there was a lot of fear with cloud. But the people who adopted early and started to understand the API services coming out from AWS as an example, and really started to understand how their role was evolving into software and not physically touching a machine any longer, they were reskilled and they were ahead of the pack and they were on the higher end of the salary curve as well. So they were a part of it. Same thing is happening now. Oddly, you would have thought, I would have thought, this is me, I would have thought that the majority of my senior engineering pack would have jumped on the AI bandwagon faster than maybe the juniors. It's just the opposite. The juniors don't know what they don't know. So they're just like, teach me, teach me, teach me. And they're absorbing it all. And they're like going lightning fast. And you can actually start to see, wow, there's this day and age where junior level resources can outpace a senior, which
Yeah.
is unheard of. I wouldn't have predicted it that way, but that's what's the reality. So with new technology, the technology needs people. It will always need people who understand what it is and how do you apply it and how do you create value from it. And so it's not that jobs go away. We create a new class of jobs and you have to reskill. So reskill, right? That's the message is reskill. Don't be scared, reskill.
Yeah. Lifelong learning.
It is. It's truly. And if you don't, you're left behind.
Yeah. Looking ahead, what technologies or approaches excite you most for shaping the future of your business?
It's definitely AI is we're early into it. Even though we're ahead of the pack, we're still early. There's so much opportunity. So I think it's just continuing to push the envelope in that space. How far can we take it? But I'm super excited about it. And I think that there's so much opportunity. And if I think about just in the media space alone, this is outside of AvidXchange, but in the media space, there's incredible opportunity for startups to understand the validity of content being created. Like, how do you know what you're viewing is real? It's truth. How do you know? And no one can answer that question in this moment. And I think that is an incredible space to get into.
Yeah, that always reminds me of that movie, The Tail Wagging the Dog, I think is what it's called.
Oh,
And
I haven't seen it.
it's about people who have to create a fake war, right, in the news. And it's a comedy, clearly, but it just talks about like how do you know what's real, right? And even
Yeah.
more so today, yeah. All right, so here's one of my favorites. This comes to our lightning round. And so just the first answer that comes into your head. The first one is a book you often recommend.
It's a book I gift a lot, Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. It's an incredible book. I'll just leave it at that. It's sold over, I don't know, 200 million copies worldwide. So it's worth a read.
All right, that's going in my list. A favorite quote or mantra.
Oh, gosh. Definitely silence in the face of evil is evil itself. Going back to human trafficking, if we can sit silent in the face of that evil, that's evil itself. And that was Bonhoeffer who said that.
Ooh, that's so strong. A habit or practice you live by.
Time leadership, not time management. I lead my time. I don't let my time manage me.
Oh, that's a really good one too.
Yes.
Yeah. What gives you hope about the future of technology and leadership?
Yeah, I think using AI for good. People are worried, keep talking about the downside of AI. How can we use AI for good? That is super interesting. It's a super interesting question for me. I'm going to keep
Mhm.
leaning into that.
I like that. So, where can listeners learn more about you and your work at AvidXchange?
AvidXchange.com is a great place to start. We're certainly all over LinkedIn as well. But yeah, we have a podcast out there. All of it's available through our website, though.
I love that. And what encouragement would you offer to leaders trying to align innovation with purpose and long term impact?
I would just say have confidence to be yourself. I recently read the book by Matthew McConaughey, Green Lights, and he says, be less impressed and more present. I'm paraphrasing, I think that's what he said. But be less impressed with the people that you're around and be more present. And
Mm,
so we worry too much about what other people are thinking. And when you're worrying about what other people think, even I have an idea, I don't want to say it. I don't want people to think I'm stupid. Or what if they like the other person's idea better than mine? Or whatever it is that's holding you back, you are robbing yourself from the growth opportunity. And so the reason you're holding back is because you're worrying about impressing the people in the room and not being present to the conversation, what you have to contribute. I just love that.
I love that too. Thank you so much for joining us. You are amazing, and it's been such a pleasure learning about your life and your leadership. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thanks for listening to Doing Good by Doing Better. I'm Margaret Rogers, CEO of Pariveda, and I hope this conversation offered you a new way to take your ideas to impact. Follow on Apple or Spotify and join us every other week as we keep learning how to do good by doing better.